Hey there, we're Shannon and Jerry Arner, your hosts of the Arner Adventures podcast.
We're a minimalist couple driven by intentional living and adventure.
Burned out from the 24/7 grind of running our business, we traded the hustle and the bustle for something more meaningful.
We parted ways with most of our belongings and moved to the coast.
Listen along as we chat about life's challenges, share inspiring stories of those who have taken big leaps to live a life outside of the norm,
and help you live with more intention and less physical and mental clutter.
Each episode is a step toward doing and being just a little bit better for ourselves and the world around us.
Life's an adventure after all. Join us for the ride.
It's the Arner Adventures podcast.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Jerry.
We are back for episode 135 of the Arner Adventures podcast.
Boy, oh boy, summer's rolling right along, isn't it?
I mean, here we are. It's getting towards the end of July, almost August.
Yeah.
I love summer. I love summer. You know why I love summer this year so much more?
Why?
Because of that pool we have in the backyard.
The Intex pool.
Listen, folks, you know that we're simple living people. Like, we've got the ocean. We love beach days. Having a refreshing pool in the backyard. Now, we didn't dig a hole in the backyard. We didn't have tons of money to come in and install something crazy. This was an Intex pool that is an above ground. It's 10-foot round diameter, right?
It is, yeah.
About 3 feet high?
I think 3 feet high, exactly.
It is absolutely amazing. We're going to link it down in the show notes. You have to check this out. It's amazing. I mean, we always have like a kiddie pool in the back for sure because we love hanging around our backyard. We love our backyard oasis.
Oh, we sure do. And with this pool, I mean, it is keeping us off the streets. That's for sure.
It is. As much as we love to travel,
yeah,
we love a good just weekend, summer at home, just chilling. You're grilling our eggplant or our veggie burgers on that grill.
Oh, gee, just don't get me going, man. Summer turns me upside down. Nothing like the touch of cool, refreshing water on your skin as well on a hot day.
Well, speaking of touch.
Oh, you're becoming the master of the segue.
Our guest today is Epiphany Jordan, an advocate and expert on reshaping our understanding of human touch.
Yeah, that was really, really interesting.
Yeah, after we had that conversation with Paul Bucky from BioTouch, it just sort of fit that now we dig in more on the conversation of touch and how important it is for our health and our healing, how a lot of people are just missing touch. So I can't wait to get into this.
Me neither. So we had an Epiphany Jordan, that is, and here we go, y'all.
Epiphany Jordan, welcome. She is a passionate advocate, reshaping our understanding of human touch. As founder of the Karuna Sessions, I believe she's going to tell us about that, and author of Somebody Hold Me, she tackles the touch deficit among singles head on. Epiphany has shared her insights at South by Southwest Interactive Festival and recently earned her Master's of Public Health with a focus on redefining touch at the University of South Florida. Her journey spans journalism, event planning, and even tarot reading, all fueling her mission to deepen human connections. Epiphany, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation today.
We do want to paint a picture to our audience. If you could tell everyone where you're coming to us from.
Right now, I live in Reno, Nevada.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you went to school at the University of South Florida, did you go in person or was it virtual?
I did it all online. I've been down there a couple times, and it was so wonderful to meet people that I had been working with semester after semester, and like be able to hug them in person. And it was fun.
Oh, that's wonderful. We wanted to have you on because we know how important, especially it's interesting coming out of a pandemic and all of that, where so many people, a lot of people struggled being distant from everyone. I was telling someone just recently how I felt like I was very social before, and now it takes a lot to get me to make a plan in person. Like, it's kind of changed me a little bit. But I do remember saying even to you, Jared, I was like, I miss like hugging, and I miss like, because we're Southern and we're very huggy, and so I did miss
Yeah.
that. And so hearing that you are someone who really specializes in human touch and the importance of it, we wanted to have you on the show to talk about that. And sort of, I guess the first thing is really what inspired you to get really interested in that and how it affects human connection.
This kind of got started about 20 years ago. I was doing some studies around sacred sexuality with a woman out of Atlanta, Georgia. And she was coming at it from the pagan community. And she was like, we're talking about worshiping the goddess here, but nobody's really talking about the goddess and her sexual aspect. And I think it was 2008 or 2009, I went to a festival with her, and she had several different offerings. And one of them was this protocol called the Karuna session. And I was just really, really struck. It was all non-sexual touch, and I was just really struck by the very profound effect that, just putting your hands on somebody's shoulder or stroking their arms was having. And I had been thinking about it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I started playing around with the format, and we ended up creating a business out of it, Karuna Sessions.
Okay.
And as I was going through the business and I started thinking about this topic and studying it more, I was like, wow, this is a really huge thing to think about and to study. And it was clear that there was a huge deficit. I mean, even before the pandemic, people were lonely and isolated and touch starved and all these things. And I just kind of kept going down the rabbit hole with it and just really fell in love with the topic, and have researched it from a lot of different perspectives and angles.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by all the stuff piling up in your life? We've got something just for you. It's the Arner Ventures Declutter 365.
Declutter 365 is our easy-to-follow guide designed to help you clear out the clutter from every corner of your life. Whether it's the pile of stuff in your home, the endless digital files on your devices, or even the mental load that keeps you up at night, we've got you covered.
Every day, you tackle a simple task that helps you chip away at the clutter. And the best part? You can start anytime. There's no need to wait for the new year or a Monday. You can dive in whenever you're ready.
Over the span of a year, we'll tackle physical, mental, and digital clutter. Imagine having a more organized home, a cleaner inbox, and a calmer mind, all without feeling overwhelmed. It's all about taking small, manageable steps that add to big changes.
Join us on this journey to a simpler, more mindful life. Head over to arnerventures.com/shop.
Let's make space for what truly matters. And now, let's get back to the show. I know that your book, Somebody Hold Me, is the single person's guide to nurturing human touch. Do you find that, yes, there's a deficit there, but do you find that it's also a deficit with, couples who are partnered in a home together, families? Like, what were your findings?
You're absolutely right. You're right on the money. Actually, do you want to tell me a little bit, maybe because your listeners listen to you all the time, can you tell me what touch is like in your home? I know you said you had a dog. I don't know if you have kids. Do you consider yourselves to be touchy-feely, or where do you fall on that spectrum?
We do not have human kids. No. Our fur babies have always been our kids. And we're a couple who chose not to have kids. And so I think it's interesting you say that, because soon after we got married, I think we've always had a really healthy dialogue about telling the other person what needs need to be met. And I'm very touchy-feely. And so I remember in the beginning, we were kind of talking about like the love languages and stuff. And I was like, that is sort of my love language is showing me through touch that you care. I feel like, and you can answer this, I feel like you have become more so through the years, but I
think that's right. Yeah. I don't think I was always that way, but I guess it's just the way, just being together that long, and her by nature being a touchy person, I suppose I've evolved a little bit in that regard, And then when you have pets too, you're always touching. And we've had cats, and now we have outdoor cats, because with her allergies, can't be inside. They're strays that have come up. So we're outside petting the cats, and then inside with our dogs. So you touch a lot with animals, of course, too.
I mean, but you're absolutely right. You know, when I was working on the book, people would come up to me and be like, you know, single people aren't the only people who are touch starved. You know, there's a lot of couples out there who don't touch each other, and you know, because we have, you know, kind of one of our dominant paradigms, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit more later in the show, is that touch equals sex. And like if you have a couple where they're having problems connecting sexually or being intimate with each other, and because they also live in this culture where touch equals sex, you know, it's like if the one partner goes in for a hug and the other partner is like, nope, they're trying to have sex with me and I don't want that. So touch becomes this thing that's just really fraught, and it makes it hard. So you know, it goes you know, it's like kind of a chicken and the egg problem, but you know, in people's minds, it's like we don't separate those two things, and it's really hard for all of us, you know, single people especially, but you know, partnered people have that issue as well. I think that's actually probably going to be my next project, is a book about non-sexual touch for couples specifically. Because it's a thing. I mean, it's a thing for all of us. You know, even if you have the most loving partner in the world and the best sex life, you know, this could still be an issue for you.
So I love that you talk about how human touch has a branding problem.
Yeah,
they need a new market campaign.
They do. I'm working on it.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this, Jer. When we met, my family, I mean, we're all from the South. Jerry's family originated from the north in Pennsylvania, but we were all very, you hug as a greeting. Like we were very, or you put your hand on someone as you're talking to them, and it really was not, of course, anything sexual. But I remember going to meet his family, like for our first holidays, and I was hugging, and I remember us having that conversation that it was very different from what they had done. Even Jerry and his dad still like shake hands when they part ways, which is touch. For me, I'm like, why are y'all not giving each other a big bear hug? Like to me, that's different. So
there's a generational thing there too. I think my dad's 90. You know, there's kind of I think men from that generation tended to just, even with your son, there wasn't that sort of thing, you know.
What do you think that is? Like for you, do you think a lot of it is generational, or why outside of couples, like for families, like why do you think that is?
So there's several different layers or levels to that. Part of it's gender, part of it is generational, part of it's the culture you grew up in. It could be a religious thing. It could be about the power, like your position in the world. You know, what you do for work. What else? A lot of it has to do with your own upbringing. I mean, a lot of the people that I talk to who have a lot of issues around touch went through some sort of physical, sexual, psychological abuse when they're kids. I mean, I have people that I talk to who are like, you know, I want to be like everybody else. You know, everybody seems to love touching and hugging, and I'm not like that. And can you help me change it? Like, wow, you know, it's, you know, so people know that they're supposed to be. So I mean, there's dozens of different reasons for why people do or don't do it. But I think the important point that you kind of bring up, which I think is really, really important for people to know, is that everybody has different comfort levels around touch. Everybody has different needs for touch. And even just having that knowledge is a game changer, because you know how you interact with people. I remember I was working on, when I was writing the book, I was taking, I had financed it on Kickstarter, and when I got all of the copies printed out, you know, I was taking these huge bunches of books in envelopes to the post office by my house in Austin, and I started chatting with the with a mailman, and I told him what I was mailing, and he got really excited about it. He was like, "Oh my God." He was like, I always like, there's all these elderly people who come in and I can tell that they're really lonely. So I come out from behind the counter and I give them a big hug. He's somebody that I would call a touch enthusiast. And so I gave him a copy of the book. And after he read it, he was like, wow. He's like, this really changed me. I had no idea that some people that I'm giving hugs to might not like the hug or want the hug, and now I'm more aware and I ask them about it. So it's like we're kind of, and we're also kind of in this weird cultural moment where we have too much unwanted touch, and yet people are touch starved. And so having those conversations around the importance of consent is also a big part of this, I feel like.
I think I learned in like a child psychology class or something in college where the importance of touch on babies, and like it's even huge. in the NICU. And so how sometimes it will even be that the nurses, or it's just about touch. And so I was again talking to someone recently just about touch and being healing. And so what are your findings of that? Do you think, did you find, or do you feel like people who are touch starved have do health issues come from being touch starved, I guess is my question.
That's a good question. There's, I found when I went to school for public health that there's different research from it on different angles, but we hadn't really started talking about it. I mean, like the thing I did at South by Southwest was about solving loneliness with human touch. And when I was doing literature reviews, in school, they have you like review all this research that's been done. And there were a few articles that started coming out like from the beginning of the pandemic from 1920 and 2020 and 2021 about, how this lack of touch was affecting people. And so there was a little bit of the research about it. But I mean, that's one of the ways that we punish people, right? It's like if you're in prison, they put you in solitary confinement. There's nobody that's touching you. And
that's a good point.
There's a lot of us who walk around without ever getting any sort of tender touch. I mean, you see this especially a lot in single men, because single women, if they see their friends in person, it's much more socially acceptable to hug. But I think that, well, the thing that I think is interesting, and it's an observation that I have, there's not necessarily, I've not seen a lot of research specifically on this topic, but the thing about loneliness is that it has effects on your physical body. It does four basic things. It increases inflammation, it increases the cortisol in your heart, it increases your blood pressure, and it lowers your immune system. Touch and the hormone that's produced with it, oxytocin, does exactly the same four opposite things. Reduces inflammation, reduces blood pressure, protects your heart from cortisol, and raises your immune system. So, I've definitely, like, I've seen like a lot of people who are very touch deprived, like they get very paranoid. They can be very angry. They have a hard time sleeping. They can be depressed or anxious. There's a lot of different things, and it's not one of those things that is very easy like to draw a correlation between. But there's a lot of in Western culture, especially, the big killers these days are lifestyle diseases, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, COPD, those kinds of things. And, whereas 100 years ago, we died a lot more from infections and viruses and bacteria. You eat some bad food and boom, you're dead, or what have you. So with lifestyle diseases, it's like, like the trajectory of how the disease develops is longer. But, there's definitely, if we look, people who are lonely often don't have any touch. And so, it's, I'm being a bad scientist here because I don't have the empirical research, but, it's like, I think it's pretty obvious that somebody who has a lot of loneliness, or is feeling really lonely, most of the time they're not getting any touch at all.
Years ago, there was an article that I was reading about AIDS patients and how, especially in the 80s and even early 90s, people were so scared to touch them or be around them. And I remember reading that one of the most important nurturing things that really sick AIDS patients could receive was just even someone just touching them, which reminds me of the NICU for babies. And that just goes to show you, like, when you don't have it, that, it's almost just, I would imagine that from a psychological or subconscious way that your body just almost yearns it. And maybe you don't even know it.
I think too, you might not know you're missing that, but like a nice touch like that, when you get touched, your body kind of goes, huh. Like you didn't really know that you were missing that. And
well, and a lot of people try to deny it. I mean, when we were doing Karuna sessions, a lot of times we were, our clients would be very touch deprived. Not always, actually. Like one of our most enthusiastic customer groups was new mothers. Because it's like they're getting a lot of touch, but it's touch where it's like, gimme, 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 and the touch isn't focused on them. And I described it as kind of like making a deposit in their nurturing bank account. Here, let us replenish you. But I would say pretty universally, the one word that I would use to describe people after they finished our sessions was relieved. Somebody else is caring for me. I'm seen, I matter. I'm worthy of having tender human connection. And it's incredibly powerful.
Well, especially if you can think about how that, even though physically it could bring people together and the connectedness, I'm just thinking there's so many things that divide us. And so if I would assume just a touch in a non-harmful way to someone would be very, just a great way to connect people. That would be powerful for people all over.
One of the words that came up a lot in my research when I did qualitative interviews was transformational. That was a word that people used to describe getting some really long, like a good long hug from a friend that they hadn't seen in a long time or something. They were like, wow, afterwards I went away and it almost made me cry because I realized how much I miss it. So I think people really try to, oh, I'm fine. It's, people are really ashamed, I think, of the fact that they don't have as much touch as they want. And it's crazy because I hear it from people, I'm really touch starved, and, but yet nobody does anything about it, because we're all like, oh, there's something wrong with me that I don't, that I don't have this basic human need met. But, there's so many larger cultural issues that are at work here that keep us separated. So
there's many wonderful things about technology. We're having this conversation because of technology.
Right.
It would be very difficult for us to connect with the physical distance. Do you feel like technology and, all the more digital interactions instead of physical prevent harms or makes it where more of us now are touch starved?
I think it's definitely one of the things that's contributing to it. It's not the whole thing. One of the things that I come across in research, I mean, we live so differently than we did even just 100 years ago. I mean, think about it. If you lived in a cold climate 100 years ago before the advent of electricity, I mean, snowy nights, your whole family would be sleeping in one bed to keep from freezing to death. It's like human warmth is needed for survival. But one of the things that I think is really contributing to this dearth of touch is people are marrying later and having fewer children. Like let me see, like 18 to 24-year-old men, I think like 25% of them haven't had sex in the past year, once in the past year. And I mean, there's statistics like that for every age demographic and gender. There's a lot of people who aren't having sex, who aren't dating, who aren't getting married, who aren't having children. More of us live alone. More of us are depending on our pets for our intimacy needs. There it could be stuff like addiction or depression or trauma or anxiety. There's a lot of different things. That we're online a lot of the time, a lot of the day. We have so much information coming at us. Another way that, like for the elderly, they often got a lot of touch through taking care of their grandkids. We don't live in intergenerational households even more. Even people who are married and have kids, it's like the size of the average American house is just mushroomed out. I mean, when my father grew up in South Africa and he lived in 2 rooms with 10 people, it's like and here I am, like sitting in I live in about a 1,300 square foot house by myself.
Yeah.
I have my animals, but so it's like there's a lot of different. We work all the time. We don't have a lot of third places and places to socialize and meet people. I mean, it's just kind of a perfect storm of things that are isolating us and keeping us physically apart from each other.
Yeah, I've just recently heard that term third places, and I thought, that makes a good point. Yeah, besides home and work, you need that third place, and it's I think we lack with that a lot of times.
I think we
too.
do too. Yeah. The Karuna sessions, is that I feel a little ignorant in asking this because we're sitting here talking about touch, but is that something that is only done in person, or are you able to lead those sessions virtually? Because I'm thinking people are listening to this going, I need this. I definitely need this. Like, how does one do that? I mean, can you do it virtually?
So there are professional cuddlers out there who do virtual sessions. That they started doing that during the pandemic. I was actually a guinea pig for one of them, so I've had the experience of doing it. Karuna sessions, there's no way I would do virtually. We closed during the pandemic. We were open in Austin, Texas, and closed down during the pandemic. And I've thought about restarting it a lot because it was such a deeply satisfying service for me to provide. It felt so good to be able to mother people and nurture them. And I miss it. It's really wonderful.
Understanding and education is so important. So, recognizing there's a problem is the first thing you should do. So, if someone reads your book, whether single or not, and they are like, wow, like this is definitely something that I'm missing, at least I'm imagining they can at least start feeling like they can have the conversation, even if they have a partner in the home or just people in their life, right?
Absolutely. But again, it's like people are ashamed and they're afraid to talk about it. I will say, when I did my qualitative research interviews, what I did it around storytelling. One of the things that came out in the research when I read people a story about a woman who was out to brunch with some friends, and she had just gotten divorced, and she was saying that she really didn't like dating. She missed sleeping with her in the same bed with her ex-husband. And she was like, she asked her friends, she's like, I saw a video of this woman who was feeling the same way. And the way she decided to address this was to cuddle with her friends. And she asked her friends, would you be willing to do this for me? Every single person that I interviewed was like, that was really brave of her to do that. I really appreciate her vulnerability of putting herself out there to ask. So it's tricky, it's complicated, it's scary, it's awkward, it's weird if you're if you're asking your friends for this. But it's also worth it to put that out, because they may say no, but they also may say yes.
Right. I feel like elements is like how we always talk about, the more we talk about mental health, the less of a stigma there is. And so sometimes you find that if you just talk about something you're going through, whether it's that or mental health, a mental health issue, you usually find that it's more accepting than you thought it was going to be because everyone's
Yeah.
going through something. So I'm thinking here that it's probably the same way with touch. I mean, from your research, it sounds like it is a much larger issue than one could
It's
even
huge.
imagine. Mm-hmm.
It's huge. I mean, and the pandemic brought it home to a lot of people who maybe didn't have the experience or didn't know about it, or
Yeah.
they maybe weren't as touch starved as some other people out there, but during the pandemic they were like, oh wow, yeah, okay, this is really problematic for me.
Yeah.
There were other people that I talked to who loved the fact that they were isolated and nobody was going to touch them. They thought that that was the best thing ever, because some people are like that. And
Yeah.
I mean, you laugh about it, but the consent piece of this is so huge.
Mm.
And this idea of that two people are saying, yes, I want to be tender and vulnerable and caring with you,
Mm-hmm.
and let's do this, is just it's such a human thing, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
it's literally being human.
Let's say you have a
Yeah.
magic wand, and with your findings, you wave your wand. What do you hope comes from you having more discussions like this in your book?
That's a great question. I mean, okay, so I always say if I were queen of the world, my first act would be to make it so all parents could stay home with their children for the
Mm,
first 18 to 24 months. It would have such a huge effect if we started raising people, because I mean, it's like you're when infants are born, their brains are still, the neurology is still developing for the first 18 to 24 months. And a lot of that is around secure attachment and being able to be present with people and emotional regulation. I mean, it would save us so much money on, these issues when people got to be adults and all of a sudden they're dealing with the effects of trauma and depression and
mm,
anxiety and PTSD and addiction and all these things. That's kind of my thing. Obviously, that's probably not going to happen in the United States anytime soon,
yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
I would say just to let people know that they have options, that they don't have to wait until they meet their perfect partner to be able to get all the touch they want, because they may or
Mm-hmm.
may not have that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And to also know that it's like, again, we have this idea that we think about touch equals sex, but when we do it that way, we don't have touch for comfort or emotional soothing or respite or
Yeah.
support, all of these things that we need as humans that are going to become increasingly important as the world gets more complicated and chaotic. I mean, we're look at like things like global warming and climate change. It's like we're
Yeah.
going to need to be able to be there for each other and take care of each other and be tender with each other. One of the things that I love about this idea of touch is that it goes it's actually like like David throwing a little rock at Goliath, but to me, it goes smack in the face of the idea of, rugged individualism, the myth of rugged individualism that the United States has built on. What a better way to counteract that than I want to be caring for you. I want to be tender for you. I want us to be human. I want us to be connected. I want us to support each other and care for each other and,
Mm-hmm.
take time for that. I mean,
Yeah.
ooh, I love that, right?
Yeah, I love that too. It's powerful. I feel like we should get to your fast 5 questions. It's
Okay, let's do it.
number 1, beach vacation or mountain retreat?
Beach vacation all day, every day, 365, 24.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
you'll have to come see us. We're on the beach.
Uh-huh.
Where do y'all live?
We live in Beaufort, North Carolina, just on the coast,
Oh
like near the Outer
wow.
Banks. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, how lovely. How
Oh,
amazing for you.
we love it.
it
We
is.
love it.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Important to be
Okay.
around water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Morning
Question.
bird or night owl?
Morning bird.
Number 3, spontaneity or detailed planning?
It's a both and. I'm pretty spontaneous. I've created a life where I can do that. I do a lot of
Yeah.
stuff on the fly, but I also love planning
I
things.
know. I read about the event planning. I was like, well, that'd be a good question.
Digital detox or constant connectivity?
Digital detox. I used to say when we were doing our sessions that the one thing that was really awesome was that we got people off their phone for an hour.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is amazing.
Seriously.
You're so right.
Let's touch each other instead of our phones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
totally.
amazing.
Yeah.
So the last one, number 5, is adventure travel or luxury relaxation?
Whew. Adventure travel, like followed by like a weekend of
Yes.
luxury relaxation.
Yes.
I
Like
that
there's
answer.
something to be said for both, for sure.
Right.
Exactly. I know. So the multiple choice stuff is hard, I think, a lot of times. So
Well, Epiphany, the question that we do ask everyone, and we would like to ask you, is what does a life well lived mean to you?
I love that question, and I'm guessing you get such different answers from everybody.
And they're all
For me,
wonderful. They're all so
yeah.
great, the answers.
We always think it's the best one every time.
For me, it's really being surrounded by family and friends and having amazing adventures, a lot of creative collaboration, and something that's really, really, really important to me is working to make the world a better place and do it in a way that allows me to be kind and generous.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that. See, that
Yeah.
is good.
Best one yet.
I mean, that's the thing is nobody ever says, nobody
Just
ever
give it to
says,
all your guests.
well, we do always go, gosh, that's so great. I mean, I do feel like no matter what the conversation is, the answer to that always does come back to the basics. Like you never hear somebody go, well, to have a shit ton of money, or I really hope I have as much crap in my house as possible. Like that's a life well lived. Like people
Yeah.
just, it's just a reminder, I think, for all of us to go, yeah, that's what's important. Like the rest
Yeah.
of it's not important.
Yeah.
But I will tell you,
Mm.
I think that what you're doing is leaving a wonderful lasting impression. A wonderful, you're changing things for the better
Mhm.
by even
Yeah.
getting the information out. And so you should be really proud of that.
Thank you. Yeah, I was talking to an old friend yesterday who was like, you don't even have a grasp on the magnitude of what you're doing, and I'm like, who, me? I don't want to be that person. I want somebody else to do it. She's like, no, you're the perfect person to get this stuff out into the world. I mean, I've got a lot of amazing colleagues and friends who are tackling it from different angles, but
Yeah.
it's important, and people really, really need it now more than ever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Mhm.
Well, before we part, please tell our audience, and we're going to link all this down in the show notes, how they can get in touch with you and how they can get your book.
Okay, great. The best way to get in touch with me is my website, which is nurturinghumantouch.com. One of the things I've just started doing, one of the things I was able to do in college was train as a health and wellness coach. So I'm starting to do coaching with people around this topic to figure out, because most people are like, I have no way of talking. I don't have anybody I can talk to about this subject.
Yeah.
And the book, Somebody Hold Me, the Single Person's Guide to Nurturing Human Touch, can be found on most of the major online book retailers, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I think it's Chapters up in Canada, Waterstones in Great Britain. And the book is out in a digital version. You can get a paper copy, or it's also as an audio book.
Oh, and we'll link to all of those in the show notes.
That would be great. The website has a lot of good information.
The
That's
home base.
fun to work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Epiphany,
Cool.
thank you so much for this conversation and for your
thanks
time.
thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed talking to y'all as well.
Well, that was such an interesting conversation.
Oh, yeah, that really was. And she brought up something, I really wouldn't have thought about it, but it kind of made sense to me. The idea of people being in a touch deficit.
Yeah.
People being afraid of human touch, of touching touching one another, you know.
Yeah. Even shaking hands. People don't do it as much anymore, because of COVID.
Because of COVID, yeah.
I think that, we talked about it in the episode, but I think it does give you food for thought to think about, okay, how many times are you finding that you are giving a hug or even just a pat on the back or anything with your partner, or like she really studied singles and needing it. And I think the biggest takeaway for me is, and I feel like I'm pretty expressive about it. Like if I need touch, I need a hug. I need, one of the things I love that you do, and I've told you, is like when I am with you and I'm walking into a room, I love when you put your hand on my lower back. Like it's very nurturing to me.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that does fill my cup, is touch. But from a outside of a love languages standpoint, I'm a hugger, like I said in the show.
Right.
And so even when I meet people, and if I feel I don't hug everybody. Let's not kid ourselves, y'all. But if I feel a connection with them and we're parting, I feel like, oh my gosh, let's give each other a hug.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not welcomed,
Yeah. And somewhere along the way, I think the standards for these kind of things have become maybe more rigid, and I don't know why. COVID had a little bit to do with it, a lot to do with it, of course. And so amongst single people, I think there's just always a second guessing on even if you are compelled to touch or hug, will that be deemed inappropriate or this or that?
Yeah, the Me Too movement, all of that. Contributed to it.
That's huge. Yeah, as huge as COVID, I think.
Yeah.
In that, so with all that being said, she really undertook some pretty cool research on this touch deficit. And why it's.
I love that she even studied it so deeply. Like every time you meet someone who has really dug into a topic that you had no idea was even an issue, it's like, wow, okay, there's still so much to learn in life.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I don't think most people would think of this as an issue or problem, but I think with most people, if they heard it like we did and it was presented to them, they'd go, yeah, that I can see where that might be an issue. You know, when you hear it the way she explains it, of course. Yeah. If this episode resonated with you, or if you know of someone who would benefit from what we talked about, please share it with a friend.
It's a great way of supporting the podcast, and we really appreciate it.
Another way of supporting the pod is by leaving us a 5-star review or rating on the platform you are listening to us on.
And go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That also supports us. You can always find us, the show notes, and sponsors who support the podcast at arneradventures.com.
And until next time, enjoy the journey you're on. We're wishing you lots of adventures.
Bye-bye.
Bye.